Pickup trucks have become so imposing over the years, and apparently this is a problem.
Dealers are slashing 30, 40, even 50 grand off trucks they swore were worth every penny. The illusion of value just burned to the ground. For years, the sticker was gospel. Pay it or lose your chance.
Okay, let's talk about car prices right now because we know they're still pretty high, especially with the interest rates as high as they are. And if you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, it may be out of reach.
Now that same number is a punchline. Discounts this deep aren't generosity. They're desperation. Every unsold truck costs them more by the hour. Why are they dropping prices this fast? What are they hiding behind those limited offers? And how long before the next brand cracks? Watch closely, because by the time this ends, you'll realize the scam was never the sale. It was the sticker itself. 80 grand trucks. There was a time, not long ago, when a working family could walk onto a dealer's lot and buy a decently equipped truck for around $40,000. That was the sweet spot. Not stripped bare, not overloaded with bells and whistles, but comfortable enough to haul the kids, tow the boat, and still feel proud driving through town. Then, in only 5 or 6 short years, the same trucks that once cost 40 suddenly carried price tags closer to 60. The industry used a once-in-a-generation shortage as an excuse to ratchet prices higher and higher, betting you would keep paying because there were no alternatives. People did pay. Families shelled out savings, signed long loans, and even went above MSRP because they were told inventory was scarce. Dealers smiled while customers begged for a truck at any cost. And while those dealerships pretended the market justified it, everyone knew the truth. It was corporate greed, dressed up as supply and demand. When Ford, Chevy, and Ram started asking $80,000 or more for leather seats and chrome trim, they crossed the line. They misread the American buyer, and buyers have not forgotten. Every monthly payment felt like a punishment, every inflated sticker like an insult. Families cut vacations, delayed home repairs, and stretched groceries just to afford trucks. That resentment never disappeared, and now it fuels payback. Now the tide has shifted. Trucks are piling up unsold, and the panic is no longer yours. It is theirs. But walking onto a lot today, you see something you have not seen in years, and the power dynamic feels very different. Now they need you. Imagine strolling across a dealer's asphalt today. Instead of empty rows and long waiting lists, you are greeted by endless lines of trucks, shimmering under the sun. Every color, every trim, stacked bumper to bumper. For years, the salesman told you, we can barely keep them in stock. Now they trip over themselves to hand you the keys for a test drive. The truth is obvious. They need you more than you need them. Overflowing supply changes everything. Those 7 million trucks flooding the market are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They are leverage in your pocket. Every unsold pickup costs the manufacturer money. Every day a vehicle sits, the dealer pays interest on it. The clock ticks louder in their office than it does in your driveway. For the first time in a long time, buyers hold the cards. You can walk away, and they know it. That desperate edge in their voice when you hesitate at the price, that is the sound of an industry losing its grip. You can see it in their faces. The salesman's smile is wider, but the sweat on his brow gives it away. The roles reversed overnight. You are no longer pleading for a truck. They are pleading for your signature. It is justice, and it is long overdue. Yet even with lots bursting at the seams, the most shocking moment comes when you finally glance at the window sticker. If you're nodding along, hit that like button so more people see what's really happening, and drop a comment with your take. Are you seeing these price drops where you live? Your voice keeps this conversation alive. The sticker price scam. The window sticker was once the gospel. Dealers loved pointing at the bold print, reminding you that MSRP meant manufacturer suggested retail price. But let's be honest, it was not a suggestion. It was a demand. Buyers paid it, sometimes more, just to get a truck. Now, something remarkable is happening. The sticker is a joke. Picture this. A dealer parks a gleaming truck out front with $90,000 splashed across the glass. You raise an eyebrow, and before you can even step back, the salesman rushes in, whispering, "But for you, 60. That $30,000 gap is not a favor. It is an admission that the sticker was always fake. The truth was hidden in inflated numbers, phantom add-ons, and corporate arrogance. And as those discounts widen, you see behind the curtain. This collapse of the sticker price is not about generosity, it is about survival. They cannot unload their inventory without shredding the illusion of value. The very number that once defined prestige is now a liability. When the number on the glass no longer matters, the whole game changes. Once the sticker became a joke, the spell broke. Buyers laughed at the idea of paying full price. The market thrives on perception, and that perception is shattered. Trucks no longer feel like rare treasures. They feel like desperate bargains. And if you think collapsing stickers are shocking, wait until you see why the automakers suddenly started playing beat the clock. Deadlines backfired. The auto industry's worst enemy has never been the customer. It has always been the calendar. Behind the glass walls of corporate headquarters, every quarter, every model year, every policy deadline is a ticking time bomb. When the clock runs out, executives lose bonuses, shareholders get restless, and the pressure rolls downhill to the showroom floor. That is exactly what happened this year. Model year changeovers meant dealers had to clear out the old stock fast. Add in looming federal tax credit shifts on electric vehicles, and suddenly, Ford, Chevy, and Ram were racing against the clock. Buyers were not begging for trucks. The suits were begging buyers to take them. That is why those once unthinkable discounts appeared overnight. The corporations were not feeling generous. They were terrified. For once, their deadlines worked against them, not against you. Behind the glossy ads and patriotic slogans, automakers are terrified of the calendar. It is not about pride or innovation. It is about survival bonuses, share prices, and keeping Wall Street calm. Deadlines turned into detonators, and the blast hit hard. And that is the sweetest twist of all. The market flipped because the pressure finally landed where it belonged, on the companies that tried to squeeze you for every last dollar. And when the panic hit hardest, the first brand to crack was Ford. Ford flinched. Ford was the first giant to blink. But make no mistake, they did not suddenly grow a conscience. They did not decide trucks were too expensive for working families. No, Ford's discounts were tactical, carefully aimed only at the trims they thought you might actually buy. Walk up to a mid-level Lariat or XLT, and the salesman suddenly has room to maneuver. Thousands come off the top, interest rates shrink, and suddenly, that $60,000 truck slides closer to affordability. Ford needs to keep volume moving, and they know the bread and butter trims are where the battle is fought. But then you glance at the high-end King Ranch or Platinum. That is where the real arrogance still lives. Prices still hover near $80,000, and the discounts shrink to almost nothing. It is as if Ford believes someone out there will still be willing to pay top dollar just for shiny chrome, cooled seats, and a nameplate stitched into the leather. They are holding on to their fantasy of luxury margins, hoping a few suckers, as even some dealers call them, will step forward. Ford's split strategy exposed their weakness. They know mid-level trims keep families in the fold, but luxury trims keep shareholders happy. That impossible balance is collapsing. Buyers want value, not vanity. The illusion that trucks are untouchable status symbols is fading fast. Ford blinked, but only halfway. And that half measure reveals fear. Fear of losing middle-class buyers while clinging desperately to a luxury dream that is collapsing. But while Ford tried to split the difference, Chevy didn't bother playing coy. They swung straight for the jugular. Chevy's 10 grand slash. Chevy looked at the same crowded lots and decided subtlety was pointless. Instead of dangling small rebates, they ripped $10,000 right off the hood of their mainstream Silverado LT trucks that once carried $60,000 stickers suddenly tumbled under the $50,000 mark. And this was not for stripped-down work trucks, the kind that only fleet buyers touch. These were four-wheel drive LTs with the V8 engine that most families actually want to drive. That move mattered because it hit the sweet spot. For normal buyers, people juggling a mortgage, groceries, and gas, Chevy made the price collapse visible. No games, no hidden internet discounts, just an immediate acknowledgement that the price had been bloated and had to come down. Families walking into a Chevy dealership were no longer told to stretch their wallets to the breaking point. They were handed a deal they could finally understand, and for many, finally afford. This was not generosity, it was survival. Chevy knew that Ford was still clinging to its high-trim illusions, and they wanted to steal the middle-class buyers Ford had just scared away. $10,000 off was a statement. Chevy was willing to take the hit just to grab the volume. For Chevy, the gamble was brutal honesty. By ripping off 10 grand in one stroke, they admitted the truth. Trucks were overpriced to begin with. Families noticed. That kind of cut feels less like a sale and more like an apology. But as aggressive as Chevy looked, Ram went even further. They did not just cut, they detonated. Ram's desperate cut. Ram entered the fight with the deepest cut of all. $13,000 sliced off the bighorn trim. On paper, that looked like a knockout punch. Buyers saw a truck that had been over $60,000 fall into the mid-40s. And unlike Ford's stripped-down discount models, the Bighorn carried the Hurricane engine, a twin-turbo inline-six that actually gave the truck serious power. Compared side by side with Ford's discounted base trims, Ram seemed to offer the most bang for the buck. But let's be honest, that discount was not kindness, it was desperation. Ram had priced themselves too high from the start. They knew buyers would not stomach over $60,000 for what should be a mid-market truck. The $13,000 deal was really just Ram clawing their way back to reality. It was an admission that they had overreached, banking on loyalty and brand pride to cover their greed. The result was striking. Suddenly, you could get the full powertrain for less than Ford's weaker base engines and at a price that undercut Chevy's mid-tier strategy. For buyers, it felt like a victory. For Ram, it was a gamble, one that might win short-term sales, but risks long-term brand erosion. Ram's desperation screams louder than their marketing. A $13,000 discount does not build trust. It exposes guilt. They priced trucks sky high, hoping brand loyalty would blind buyers. It failed, and now they are clawing back credibility with a chainsaw, not a scalpel. And while the affordable trims were finally moving, the so-called luxury flagships were telling a very different story. Luxury lots rot. Here's the truth the automakers do not want to admit. Nobody is lining up to spend $90,000 on a pickup anymore. Those so-called luxury trucks, Ford's Platinum, Ram's Tungsten, Chevy's EV-RST, still sit on lots, gathering dust. Buyers have walked away from the idea that chrome trim, cooled cup holders, and an oversized touchscreen justify a house-sized loan. For years, manufacturers counted on these top trims to prop up their margins. Even if the lower models carried slim profits, the big fish, the $80,000 and $90,000 status trucks, kept Wall Street smiling. But now, even those with money to spend are balking. Why pay $90,000 when your neighbor just drove off in a nearly identical truck for half the price? Why sign a loan that looks like a mortgage when the market is collapsing all around you? Those trucks are not symbols of success anymore. They are symbols of foolishness. Every day they sit unsold, they remind the industry that its luxury illusion is over. The buyers are not playing that game anymore. These unsold luxury monsters are becoming showroom ghosts. Dealers park them front and center, but buyers walk right past. Every untouched $90,000 truck is a monument to arrogance, proof that the old playbook no longer works in neighborhoods tightening their belts. And that raises the real question. What broke the system so badly that even the most loyal customers walked away? To find that answer, you have to look behind the curtain. Factories wouldn't stop. The strangest part of this entire collapse is that the automakers saw it coming and still kept the lines moving. When the shortage hit a few years ago, every brand used it as cover to raise prices. They told you supply was tight, demand was overwhelming, and higher costs were unavoidable. But when the supply chain started to loosen, they did not ease off the gas. They had signed contracts with suppliers, locked in production targets, and bet that buyers would keep paying whatever sticker they slapped on the glass. Factories kept running as if the shortage never ended. New trucks rolled out daily, shipped to dealers already drowning in inventory. Why? Because slowing or shutting down production costs them more than flooding the market. It is easier for them to stack up thousands of unsold vehicles on lots than it is to renegotiate supplier contracts or mothball a factory line. You pay the price for that inertia when the sticker is bloated, but now they are paying it when trucks sit unsold. Automakers call it efficiency. Buyers call it greed. Every truck cranked off the line was meant to maximize profit, not meet real demand. The assembly line never asked if families could afford it. It only asked if factories could keep running. And the irony is rich. The very machine they built to squeeze you is now strangling them. And just as the lots began overflowing, Washington stepped in with deadlines that poured gasoline on the fire. Washington's fuse. Every automaker pretends they are in charge, but in truth, Washington often calls the shots. This year, federal deadlines tied to electric vehicle tax credits and emissions targets forced companies into panic mode. Credits were set to expire or phase out, meaning trucks had to be sold before the calendar flipped. Instead of measured pricing adjustments, dealers were ordered to move metal at any cost. Politicians sold it as climate policy, a step towards saving the planet. But for the companies, it was not about the environment. It was about quarterly sales numbers, bonuses, and shareholder expectations. They dressed up a financial scramble as moral responsibility. Meanwhile, buyers could see through the act. Suddenly, the same truck that was worth $70,000 last spring was marked down by nearly $20,000 as the deadline loomed. This was not innovation, it was fear. And the pressure did not just come from government policy. Once the credits were dangled in front of buyers, banks and lenders saw their own chance to weaponize finance. The deadlines were dressed up as policy, but in practice they were panic buttons. Politicians claimed victory for sustainability, while automakers scrambled to protect stock prices. Buyers saw through the performance. It was not about the planet, it was about quarterly desperation. Because when the discounts were not enough, the bankers pulled out their oldest trick. They played with your payment. It's about payments. For years, dealers hammered home one phrase: what do you want your monthly payment to be? It was never about the truck's real value. It was about squeezing your budget into a neat little box. This time, with trucks sitting unsold and buyers walking away, the finance arms of Ford, GM, and Stellantis started working overtime. They slashed interest rates, extended loan terms, and absorbed costs through captive lenders. Suddenly, a $60,000 truck looked affordable, not because it was, but because the math was twisted. They would rather eat the interest than admit the truck was overpriced. A buyer staring down 7 years of payments at 2% interest feels more comfortable than staring at a bloated sticker. But in reality, that payment was engineered to mask the collapse of value. Stretch the loan long enough, drop the APR low enough, and the illusion holds, at least until resale time comes and reality hits. Stretching payments is not relief, it is shackles. A lower monthly bill hides the trap of longer debt. Families walk away thinking they won, but years later they are still chained to trucks that never deserved those bloated stickers. For families desperate for transportation, the game feels familiar. You get a deal on paper, but the debt follows you home. The automakers saved face in the showroom, but they cannot escape the larger truth. Because no matter how they twist the numbers, the wrecking ball of affordability is swinging straight at them. Affordability strikes. This is where the story cuts to the bone. Even with all the discounts, all the financing games, and all the government deadlines, the trucks are still too expensive. Wages have barely moved in a decade, while prices for everything, food, gas, insurance, housing, have soared. The average family looks at a discounted $50,000 truck and still feels the weight of the payment crushing their monthly budget. Automakers can shuffle numbers, but they cannot change the fact that ordinary people simply cannot afford the machines they are building. The collapse is not just about overproduction or tax credits. It is about a fundamental mismatch between what corporations demand and what families can pay. They jacked up prices so high that even $10,000 off feels insulting. That is why lots are clogged, why high-end trims rot in place, and why buyers are walking away. Affordability is the wrecking ball the automakers cannot dodge. And that pressure is not confined to showrooms. It is spilling out into neighborhoods, communities, and politics. The fight is no longer just about trucks. It is about culture, pride, and power. And that is when the battle leaves the factory floor and crashes into culture and politics. Your neighbor's mistake. Picture two driveways in the same neighborhood. On one side sits a shiny truck bought last year for $80,000. On the other side sits a nearly identical truck, purchased this month for $40,000. Same model, same shape, same badge on the grille. The only difference is timing. And suddenly, the proud owner of last year's prize looks like the sucker. Resale values are collapsing. Trucks that once held their value like gold are now dropping in price faster than their owners can keep up. Pride is turning to resentment. People who thought they had made a statement of success are realizing they just overpaid for a depreciating liability. It is no longer a matter of who has the newest truck. It is who got the better deal. And that shift is tearing at the very identity of truck ownership in America. For the first time, the guy with the shiny truck is not admired, he is pitied. And that sting runs deep in a culture where trucks are more than vehicles. They are status, power, and pride. And while resentment builds on the street, the fight is spilling into unions, dealerships, and state houses. Everyone wants your dollar. The ripple effects are hitting every corner of the industry. Workers on the factory floor want hours. They need paychecks, overtime, and steady shifts. But when trucks pile up unsold, production slows, and suddenly unions are demanding answers. They know layoffs are the next card management might play. Dealers, meanwhile, are stuck in the middle. They finance their lots, paying interest on every unsold truck, and now they are begging for cash to survive. Every day a pickup sits is money lost. The very franchises that once thrived on scarcity are drowning in excess. They push automakers for rebates and push customers with desperate ads. And politicians? They are rushing to grab credit. Governors pose at ribbon cuttings. Claiming victory for lower prices, senators frame the chaos as proof that their policies work. But make no mistake, none of them are lowering prices out of kindness. They are spinning panic into political theater. Everyone is fighting over your dollar, and for once, you are the prize. But if workers, dealers, and politicians are scrambling, the fury coming from Wall Street makes them look calm. Wall Street hates it. For buyers, lower prices feel like long overdue justice. But to investors, those discounts are nothing short of a nightmare. Wall Street loved the truck boom because it was pure profit. Automakers could charge $50, $60, even $80,000 and buyers still lined up. Margins were fat, stock prices soared, and shareholders cheered. Now those margins are collapsing. A truck that once delivered $15,000 in profit may now deliver only a fraction. Multiply that by millions of trucks, and you get a Wall Street panic. Analysts call it a pricing trap. Investors whisper about bankruptcies, restructuring, and vanishing dividends. The very justice buyers fought for is being described as a catastrophe in corporate boardrooms. And that is the irony. They are mad because you are finally paying less. They call your victory a disaster because it costs them billions. That tells you everything you need to know about where their loyalty lies. Which leaves one last question. What will the automakers try next to claw back what they lost? The next trap. Here is the part every buyer needs to hear. The automakers are not giving up. They will never simply accept smaller profits. The next sticker you see might not carry a giant number, but that does not mean you are safe. Instead of bloated MSRPs, they will hide the pain in new ways. Production cuts to limit supply, fake bundles that add costs without adding value, and hidden fees buried deep in financing paperwork. The sticker might look lower, but the trap will be waiting. This is the new playbook. They will try to claw back every dollar they lost during this collapse. They will disguise desperation as innovation, rebrand greed as strategy, and test whether buyers are still paying attention. But now you know their game. You know the pressure points, the tactics, and the tricks. The fight over trucks is not just about vehicles anymore. It is about who holds power in the economy. Corporations, politicians, or the people who sign the checks at the end of the month. And this fight, it is only just getting started. The story doesn't end here. It's only the opening round of a fight that touches your wallet, your job, and the choices sitting in your driveway. Today you saw how the walls cracked, but tomorrow, they may try to rebuild those walls around you. That's why staying ahead matters. Share this video so others aren't blindsided, and make sure you're here for the next reveal, because the automaker's next play is already being written. And when it drops, you'll want to be the first to know.